Hi, I'm Jennifer Green, and welcome to week 1 of English 113. This week we're going to go through the remembered event essay. So first of all, the overview for week 1 takes you through a couple of things you need to do. You will be reading through the first couple of chapters of the St. Martin's Guide to Writing, and then you will be viewing the lecture, which you're doing now, and then you have some writing to do. The pre-writing journal that you will do is broken into 5 small entries and then your rough draft. The pre-writing journal will be submitted during week 2, and that is worth 20 points. So use the pre-writing journal as your brainstorming sessions to get yourself thinking about what it is that you want to use as your main topic for your remembered event essay. Again, if you'll notice here, it's not due until week 2 when your essay's due. At the end of the week, this week, by day 7, Sunday, you should have written a rough draft of your remembered event essay, and you should have uploaded it online in the tutorials section to Smart Thinking. This is where you'll get online feedback, which is very valuable and helpful, and revisions for your final draft. The last thing that you'll do for this week is take your quiz on the reading assignments. So just to get started with the process of writing, the journey of writing, it is a journey, it is a process, and writing allows for us to use metacognitive strategies. Metacognition is the ability to think about, to write about what we think, and there's a saying that says, how do I know what I think until I see it written down? And so it is a process, and it's a mind-body connection. Writing allows us to discover new things. It helps us to clarify our thoughts and our ideas. Sometimes we have things in our mind, but it doesn't become more clear until we get it out. So it's also important to remember that when you are reading and writing, and then writing essays and proofreading and editing and looking over them again, it's important to give yourself some space and go back and look at it later with a fresh eye, or to give others an opportunity to read your work so that they can see things that you may not necessarily see as miscommunication or error. Because sometimes when we're writing something, we know what we want to say, and we think it's there on the paper because we know what we mean, but it may not necessarily be there, or it may not be there very clearly. So it's really important to get some peer editing, get a different perspective when you are writing your essays. Another thing to remember is that reading and writing are very closely related. They are directed. The better you read, the better you write. The better you write, the better you read. So it's important to keep that in mind and to practice. It's like a dance, and some people, it just doesn't come naturally. Some people have very good dance moves, and they have rhythm, and they can dance easily and smoothly and naturally, and other people have to practice over and over and over in order to get it right. And so that I really relate writing to dancing. So I encourage you to think about, what is your perspective on writing? Maybe you have some fears or some concerns about writing. What are they? And perhaps as you go through this class, I can help you in addressing those fears. For your first essay for this week in English 113, you are going to be writing about a remembered event essay. A remembered event essay is basically a really good story in which you are the character, the narrator, and you are the main character in the story. And there are 3 main components that you're going to include in your remembered event essay in order to get the good grade. You're going to have a well-told story with good narration. It means it has to have like a beginning, a middle, and an end. It's going to be full of details and vivid descriptions, sensory language, exciting words and verbs. And then it's going to also include a dominant impression and significance. And what that means is, woven throughout the essay, you're going to include a feeling, a lesson learned, how you felt. Okay, it's feelings and thoughts, but it's conveyed in how well you write. So if we go through each of those three features a little bit more slowly and carefully, again, the first one is the well-told story. So in the well-told story, your essay is going to arouse curiosity, it might have some suspense, it might have a conflict, build to a climax. It's all the elements of a good story with a beginning, middle, and end. You do need to have a setting, a specific time and place, and a location, and you do want to have characters, including yourself, and you want to use dialogue. That means the characters have to be talking to each other, not throughout the whole entire essay, but at least for a little bit. You should, in your writing, be able to allow the reader to empathize or identify with what's going on. We should be able to feel your point of view and what you're feeling and thinking as we're going through the story with you. This is an example of a plot diagram that's used in literature. And as you can see, there's a beginning, which is called an exposition. Every story has a rising action that leads to the climax. Then there's a falling action as things come together, and a resolution. And on the top, you'll see that this is the typical model, this is the standard model, but realistically, in every book that you read and every movie that you'll watch, most of the text or the film will take its time going through the rising action. Usually the climax, falling action, and resolution happen fairly quickly and at the very end. And again, you can use this as a brainstorming chart to list out how it is that you're going to lay out your story. Don't forget to include your characters, the place, setting, and what is it that is going to be your dominant impression. The second is the vivid descriptions, and that's very self-explanatory, very simple. You're going to have action verbs, you're going to have prepositional phrases like something, if you were on something, around something, under something. This just adds an element of detail. And you're going to use sensory language, words that relate to the five senses. Show us, don't tell us. Show us what something smelled like, felt like, tasted like, sounded like. Recall your thoughts and feelings with great detail. I've given you some examples. Some uses of similes and metaphors are really great when using some sensory writing. Okay, similes and metaphors are when you compare things using like or as. A simile is a comparison. Something is like something else, or something is as blank as something else. And when you do that, you need to keep in mind that it can't literally be that. So you can say, I was as big as an elephant. And so literally I can't be the size of an elephant, but it paints a picture, okay? And then a metaphor is where you state something as if it really is something else. Writing is a monster in the night, okay? And again, it can't literally be that, but it gives you a good picture. And I ask a question here, why do writers typically use descriptions of characters sparingly in their remembered event essays? If you pay attention in the chapter that you read in the St. Martin's Guide, you will notice that the essays don't focus on the character descriptions, okay, because the focus is on the event, the remembered event. And if you get too caught up in describing the character, then you're not focusing on the event and the lesson learned. So describe the event, and in doing so, you should be able to give a good description of the character as they experience that event. The third element of this essay is your dominant impression and significance. And this is where all of your details of your story connect together to create an overall idea or a message. And the important thing to note is that this is similar to a thesis, but it's not the same as a thesis, because a thesis is one specific sentence that states what your whole essay is going to be about. And you won't be doing that. Instead, you will have just this impression or this mood or this feeling running throughout your essay entirely. For example, if you're sharing with us a fear that you had, we should be able to feel that fear or that hope or that confusion all throughout your essay through your use of sensory language words. So you want to ask yourself, what is it that you want to communicate, and how can you do so in order to create this dominant impression? Again, choose details and words that will keep the focus on your dominant impression, keep us with you. What's your purpose? What am I trying to explain? What's the message that I want to give? Okay, that the reader can understand what happened to me and why was this a powerful event in my life. Some ways to do that would be to include your thoughts and feelings. You could directly tell us how you felt. Like, I was so scared. I felt like this was going to happen, or it seemed as if the world was crashing in on me. You can also think about, what I would have done differently. I would have rather done this in hindsight. Another way to create a dominant impression is to give a contrast to a present day perspective. So you can say, afterwards I learned this, or to this day I still think I should have done this, or this should have happened. So that gives us like a before and after, a compare and contrast perspective. And an example is in your reading, The American Childhood, and I ask you to just take a look at the story and what dominant impression was achieved through this short story. Definitely, I got the feeling of this all or nothing, this, living on the edge, even if it's dangerous, I'm going to do it. There was another message of the importance of what happens when you succumb to peer pressure against your better judgment. And there was also a metaphor of life being compared to a game of football. And I thought those were all really good examples in that essay. So for your essay, this is your task now. This is your first big essay for 100 points. You're going to choose an important event from your life that relates to your spiritual journey. And this will be a 3-page essay of this account in MLA format. Now, you won't be doing any parenthetical citation. You're not quoting any sources because it's a first-person point of view essay. So the format is just the heading, the page numbers, that sort of thing. And again, you're going to include the 3 features: the well-told story, the vivid description, and the autobiographical significance. I have given you an example of possible approaches that you can take a look at. Maybe list several ideas and then figure out, is it too broad to write about? Is it going to be too much more than 3 pages, or is it too narrow? Can I even get 3 pages out of it? Put your event into chronological order, perhaps follow that plot diagram that I had provided for you. Make a list of all of the sensory details so you know how you can include them and relate to the 5 senses. Write down some dialogue so that you can have your characters speaking, and be sure that your ending has a strong moral message so that it's very clear what the lesson was that you learned. And here I have provided for you the rubric that will be used in grading your essay. This is for the 100 points. You can see 40% of it is broken down into the story, the overall plot diagram of your story. 25% is all of the details of the people, the places, the sensory language. The 25% here is your autobiographical significance. How well do we get that impression of the lesson learned of your spiritual journey, and how did you reach that understanding? And the last 10% is just the semantic, the grammar of it all, the format. Did you spell everything right? Did you proofread it? Go back over it. Make sure you proofread a couple of times before you submit, because errors are distracting, and you want to show attention to detail. And with that, I conclude. I know it was fast, but you can watch this again. You can call me or text me at any time, and I wish you the very best luck on your first essay in English 113.